Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight to Flyleaf Books. We're your local independent bookstore, and we appreciate your support. Your butts in your seats and your purchases of books are what let us have these sorts of events, and we really love them. So thank you. This evening, we have the pleasure of hearing from Stephanie Elizondo Griest, presenting Art Above Everything. Elizondo Griest is a globe-trotting author from South Texas. Her 6 books include Around the Block, My Life in Moscow, Beijing, and Havana, Mexican Enough, and All the Agents and Saints, Dispatches from the U.S. Portlands, as well as today's release, Art Above Everything. She currently serves as a professor of creative nonfiction at the UNC Chapel Hill. Yeah. If you haven't already, you can get a copy of the book up front at our registers, and you can come get it signed after the talk. We'll continue the signing line then, so we'll just have the line in the same spot then, wrap it around. So after the talk, I'll come back up and help you with that. But here we are.
Thank you all so much for your presence tonight. It really means everything to me. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the agonies and the ecstasies of placing art at the core of your existence. Raise your hand if you have done just that. Amazing, amazing. So, you are the reason that I wrote this book. To show us that we are not alone in this radical decision that we have made. Reckless? Maybe. But we are not alone in choosing art above everything. So I'm going to share a number of things with you tonight. I've got a PowerPoint presentation. Those of you who have taken my class know I'm all about the PowerPoint presentations. So I'm going to share some slides with you. I'm going to share some incredible clips, and then I'll do a reading toward the end. So I'll start it off with my spark to create. It happened. It was ignited in the family garage. I entered one afternoon to find my dad seated at his throne behind his drum kit. He struck the snare again and again, revving it like an engine before volleying from tom to tom so that the sound swelled and dropped, swelled and dropped. His sticks moved so fast, they blurred. A thunderclap of cymbals detonated a kick pedal boom, and suddenly, I wasn't a little girl carrying a tray of bologna sandwiches. I was a rocket blasting through the cosmos. Sound is where? It was totally working.
It was totally working.
That's my dad entertaining troops aboard an aircraft carrier in the Pacific with the U.S. Navy Jazz Ensemble. Yeah! Rock it out. For my nightly bedtime story, my dad used to spin a globe and tell me about whatever country his finger landed on. That became my childhood ambition. I, too, wanted to make art that transported. I just had to find my form, which wasn't easy, given that my voice cracked in the choir and my ashtrays exploded in the kiln. Then one summer in Minneapolis, Kansas, I learned that my grandmother, Madge, had kept every letter I had ever written her. They kept her company, she said. That really touched me because I really worried that my grandmother was lonely. My grandfather had gotten shot in the foot years before and had such a debilitating limp that he basically lived in the basement, rising only for meals at noon and at 5. His hunger dictated her days. Watching him feast on chicken fried steak at the table while she spooned cottage cheese by the sink gave me a lifelong fear of marriage, domesticity, and cottage cheese. This notion of keeping my grandmother company then was really motivating. I began paying closer attention to landscapes and conversations so I could better describe them for her. We exchanged letters until her death, a few months before I entered journalism school. There I learned how to share the intimacy of a letter on an exponentially larger scale. And once I started traveling, I realized I had found my own transportive art form. So these 3 books collectively represent 20 years of my life. It is the gratitude of my life to have written them. But I gotta say, doing so was hell. Throughout my 20s and 30s, I quit one job after another and abandoned apartments and partners and communities so I could follow one story after another after another. I rarely had health insurance. I slept wherever was free, usually on a futon with somebody else's cat. There was an inverse relationship between how hard I worked on my art and how responsibly I managed every other aspect of my life. As more and more of my friends got married and had kids, a question really started haunting me. Is art enough? I couldn't decide, and my eggs were vanishing by the minute. So in 2014, the year I turned 40, I decided to start asking other women if the sacrifices they had made for their creative pursuits felt worthwhile. Every story was so revelatory, I sought another. Not only other writers, but dancers and actors and musicians and sculptors from every corner of the globe. Listening to these women reflect on their own internal strife with art, their insecurities, their jealousies, their disappointments, was deeply cathartic. But what truly moved me was hearing how their art had enabled their survival of externally imposed trauma, like racism, like misogyny, like genocide, like war. When the United States began its descent into authoritarianism, their stories became a guide for powering through. I share these stories with you now, with hopes of inspiring the same. Our first stop is India. A few hours from Bangalore is a village for classical Indian dancers. It is presided over by a dancer so revered, she's considered not only a guru, but a goddess. For the past quarter century, Sarupa Sen has been rehearsing and performing upward of 9 hours a day, 7 days a week at theaters around the globe. Her art form is based off of the sensuous images carved into Hindu temple walls thousands of years ago. Every pose represents a different word, with every flick of the wrist, arch of the brow, and slap of the foot adding meaning. As she flows from one pose to the next, she builds sentences that add up to paragraphs that merge into stories that recreate the myths and legends of India. Like so. Tech help. Sorry. It was so working, I promise. Let's see. There we go. So let me just cut this. For those of you who will catch the inside joke, that's the one. Beautiful. I asked Sarupa if art was enough, and she said, Odyssey is based on the concept of devotion. It is only when you empty yourself out that you allow others in. It allows a communion with a larger being. Art is a lot about that. You become one with art. It is like a spiritual orgasm. Your body resonates, your emotional energy is suspended. You don't feel any difference between who is watching you and who you are. That balance is what you live for. But what if we want art to change not only ourselves, but the whole world around us? To find out, I flew to Rwanda next, to spend time with Hope. Hope Azeda is a Rwandan playwright born in exile in Uganda. Her family fled there after the first attempted genocide of the Tutsis and settled into a refugee camp. Gunshots composed her daily soundscape. Her brothers returned to Rwanda as guerrilla fighters in 1994. In the genocide that ensued, 1 million people were killed in 100 days, including multiple members of her family. Hope moved back to Rwanda after the bloodshed ended, armed only with a bachelor's degree in theater. She gathered some teenagers under a tree and taught them all that she had learned. They became the nation's premier theater company, Mashirika. Then one day, the Ministry of Culture called, and they asked Hope to write a play to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the genocide. It would be held in Kigali's biggest stadium, with the president and other dignitaries in attendance. It was the commission of a lifetime. The only catch was, Hope was given 1 week to do this. Quote, I had to break all the rules I learned in art school about having two characters with conflict and a rising action and resolution. We needed reconciliation. Reconciliation needs to happen within. I started looking at individual stories. I found one woman who had survived a massacre in a church. She survived by hiding beneath the corpses. For 3 days, she hid there. She was pregnant. She gave birth to a son immediately after. And I think, what kind of question is this boy asking? He cannot celebrate his birthday because it is a day of national mourning. Hope wrote a play with 1,000 performers, including a 10-year-old boy who repeatedly asked, what happened? Therapists and psychologists lined up in the aisles to tend to the audience members, who started screaming and fainting as the actors fell to the ground, reenacting the killings. I asked Hope, is art enough? She said, the world for me is a broken mirror. I'm trying to see how art can stitch it back together. Hope founded the Ubuntu Festival, which unites dozens of artists from other nations that have also survived genocide. Kosovo, Iraq, Syria, Armenia, Cambodia, Northern Ireland, Israel, Palestine. Like so. I'm sorry, y'all. This will maybe be the last time we suffer through this one. This one is a really amazing video. I promise you want to see it. There's a what?
There's a play button.
Go for it. Yeah? Should we see? Yeah.
I don't know if it's on the, I don't think it's on the screen, but I think.
Yeah, right there.
There.
I think it might be screen capture.
Oh.
It really doesn't loading.
Okay, yeah. We even did like a tech check a couple of days ago, and
Everything went so well. The tech check.
Yeah.
It's kind of frozen now, huh?
It's very
like it's not even giving it.
Okay. Oh, this is nice.
Mister can help.
Want to help? Yeah, go for it.
That's my only thing when people use it.
Of course. If your PowerPoint works, are you even a professor?
We love you, Steph.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna
It's
be
amazing. It's all great.
So Hope showed me what happens and how art can actually give us agency over the trauma that we have inherited, how it can actually heal us intergenerationally. But after this amazing video, which I really want to show you, I started wondering, what happens when the turmoil is now? What happens when nefarious forces ask art to perpetuate it? That is what led me to the next slide, to the House of the People in Bucharest, Romania. 700 architects and 24-hour crews of up to 20,000 shift workers apiece erected the most gargantuan building. It's actually considered, it still is, the heaviest building in the world. At the time it was built, it was the biggest building in the world, and now it's the heaviest because of all the marble. And it was built at the behest of Nicolae Ceausescu, one of history's most wretched authoritarian dictators. His plan was to showcase the fine craftsmanship Romania could offer within its walls. Crystal from Transylvania, brocade curtains from Sibiu, 40-foot portraits, all emblazoned with the dictator's face. So how do you make art when such a monstrosity is your venue? You become, are we getting somewhere? Okay, you become an abstract artist, so the dictator does not commission you. That was a strategy of Florica Pravenda. Her parents were intellectuals who got banished to the countryside during the dictatorship. Yes, so,
Yeah?
Go for it, yeah, let's go, right back to Rwanda, everybody.
Start again, just kidding.
No thanks. Okay, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then this right here, this is the so-called House of the People. So Ceausescu, I mean, it's not even known how many people died in the creation of this. Probably thousands of people were killed while making this total monstrosity. It was never used even one day. Ceausescu himself was murdered before he could ever use it. It's equally deep. It goes as below the dirt into the earth as high as it is. He was going to, because he was highly paranoid. I mean, if you become a dictator of that stature, you become quite paranoid. So he basically, it's completely inverted down below. And so he was planning on being able to live out his days there in the case of major nuclear war or attack. So what happened with Florica Pravenda is that her parents were intellectuals, and that was a very challenging position to be in during the dictatorship. They got banished to the countryside, and Florica discovered her art form when she was 3 years old. She ended up graduating. Let's see, is this not enough? Fun! Okay, you know what? Could you just can you operate it? That would be super awesome. Okay, yeah, just go okay, here we go. Florica graduated from the nation's top academy. If she'd been willing to paint Ceausescu's face, the dictator's face, the government would have given her a studio downtown and access to quality brushes and paints and canvases. But because her work was considered bourgeois, she got assigned to work in a clothing factory, a clothing factory, a 2-hour bus ride away. For 6 years, Florica could paint only on Sunday. There was no chance of ever showing her work, much less selling it. If the wrong person saw it, she could endanger her entire family. Nonetheless, Florica painted. She painted because she could. She painted because she must. As she told me, artists who wanted to live well would do compromise. They would paint Ceausescu. So I construct myself with my profession. I arrive to be a strong woman, a strong human being. Like this, nobody can manipulate me because I have my own ideas about everything.
Woohoo.
Next slide. The next slide is her artwork. I have a quick little span. So this is what she calls the dictatorship of technology. It's a series on Facebook, and it's amazing.
That is,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So you can see all of these, the Facebook faces. Really incredible work. And country after country, we just have one more video left, or actually two, sorry, okay. And country after country, the artists that I met shared how, by empowering themselves through their creative endeavors, they empowered others. Nowhere was this more apparent than in Aotearoa, New Zealand. There I met the musical artist Mama Mihirangi. She descends from a lineage of women who boarded canoes in East Polynesia 1,000 years ago and set off for faraway shores. These women were military strategists. They were diplomats, they were mothers, they were healers, they were composers, they were poets. British colonists were so scandalized by the sight of these feather-cloaked warriors, they refused to trade with them, depriving women a role in the new economy. Decades of land theft, forest destruction, disease, and forced religious conversion ensued until one day an octogenarian activist named Weena Cooper refused to take one injustice more. She set off marching to Parliament to demand Maori land back. She was 80 years old. Parliament was 680 miles away. Tens of thousands of Maori joined her, sparking the Maori cultural renaissance, of which Mihirangi is now the next generation a part. As she said, quote, I want to push for Indigenous women's equality, to be an instrument for it, and to use music as a platform to put that forward with other women in our culture who are empowered by our culture. Mihirangi does so by fusing traditional Maori songs and martial arts with loop pedals, a sampler, and a mixer to channel this ancestral strength, like so. All right, let's see if this video happens. She is killer. I was supposed to go on tour with her, and then COVID intervened. These artists helped me realize that by passing on the wisdom gained from my own teachers, via my books, via my students, I too was upholding a lineage, that of art. So did I need them to contribute to my flesh and blood lineage? That's right. I still could not decide if I wanted to have a baby. And by that point, I was 43 years old. And then this happened. that I don't notice my stomach doubling in size. There's just so many more reasonable explanations for it. Like that bucket worth of ceviche I've consumed since arriving here to Peru, or the countless pisco sours that followed. Altitude could also be the culprit. My ears are popping, my mind is whirling. It makes sense that my belly is distending too. But my then partner, Cielo, is concerned enough to call Tito. Tito is a renowned curandero de sonido, a traditional sound healer. People line up to tell him their ailments, and he realigns the meridians of their bodies using the frequencies of sound. We're in luck. Tito is hosting a ceremony tonight. We knock on his door. Tito is an ageless Peruvian with a raised mole on his forehead and curly gray hair that dangles past his shoulders. He leads us into his music room, where flutes with centuries-old histories line the shelves. Some are carved from wood, others fired from clay. One has a bell shaped like the head of a jaguar. Tito places each flute atop la mesa, 2 woven textiles unfurled across the floor to mark the 4 directions. The panpipes are for purification, he says. The tiniest flute, made from the delicate bones of a condor, call in the spirits. The longest flute with the deepest resonance is abuelo, the grandfather. It connects listeners to their past. Nestled among the flutes are a charango and 3 Tibetan singing bowls. Tito scatters coca leaves and rose petals over the instruments before lighting the candles dotting the room. Gradually, other guests arrive. Tito blows into a massive conch shell, followed by a small clay monkey. Strumming the charango with a condor feather, he walks around la mesa 3 times before signaling Cielo to bow in with her violin. Their music penetrates like the smoke coiling from the copal. It snakes beneath my eyes. It snakes beneath my skin. Tito plays 2 clay vessels connected at the top and bottom by lowering one so that the water flows in from the other, creating a long, low whistle. This sound snakes beneath my blood. Midway through the ceremony, Tito selects a flute that is thicker than his wrist and several feet long. Approaching me, he blows through the centermost hole. The sound quivers my belly. Cielo swoops in and lowers to her knees. She plays the lullaby she composed for me early in our courtship. Never have I heard sound so tender. Every cell of me contracts. Every cell of me expands. Any chance you're pregnant? My doctor in Carborough asks, hand on my belly. Not a chance. Are you sure? I think for a moment. Well, I am Catholic. She doesn't laugh. You feel like you're 20 weeks pregnant, Stephanie. She arranges for blood work, then hands me a cup. There's hopefulness in this gesture. Pregnancy is a happy explanation for why my womb is swelling. The Saturday before surgery, Cielo and I invite friends over to her cabin in the woods. Driving home from the liquor store, I notice the feed store is selling pumpkins. We pull over. You think that one's the size of your tumor? Cielo asks, pointing at a chubby pumpkin. Of course not. My tumor is much bigger than that. Cielo enters the feed store and returns with the tape measure. How about this one? Gross. No, the thing is huge. Cielo measures it anyway. It's just a couple of centimeters off. Driving home with the pumpkin on my lap, I contemplate the one in my belly. My left ovary is surely history. I told my surgeon to remove the right one too, if it looked remotely suspicious. So this is likely my last weekend with ovaries. I haven't exactly treated them well. I've been taking birth control pills since I was 20, but often irregularly, swallowing 2 or 3 at a time to make up for the days that I missed. If I ever had unplanned sex, I took a morning after pill too. No doubt my ovaries are frustrated. Their driving mission has been thwarted every month for the past quarter century. It makes sense why they grew the biggest thing they could with every non-spermal material available. Cielo calls us outside where she's built a bonfire. We envision tonight as a ceremony of sorts, something to fortify my body against cancer. But when Cielo instructs our guests to take turns stabbing the pumpkin, as a tumor proxy. They are aghast. She tosses it into the flames instead. The pumpkin lands with a thud between logs, roasts a few seconds, then implodes, spewing seeds I try not to interpret as cancer cells. The air thickens with charred pumpkin. I never decided not to have children. Every time a hopeful breeder appeared in my life, however, I was already enamored with the book project. 2 of my previous partners ended our relationships because of this. Cielo, meanwhile, has already picked out her sperm donor. I begged to put off this monumental decision until all the agents and saints had been published. Now the decision's been made. My fertility is over. My relationship with Cielo soon will be too. When the phone rings 1 week later, my mother is busy coaxing my father out of my kitchen. By the time I hang up, she is kneeling beside me while he eats every chocolate in the pantry. We stare at each other, too stunned to speak. The verdict just changed. My surgeon just diagnosed me with ovarian cancer. Chemotherapy starts in 3 weeks. The first thing you realize as a cancer patient is how many of your body parts are expendable. Loyalties are instinctively drawn and keenly felt, like my right ovary. Even when I learned that its partner grew the tumor, I felt no mercy for it. I wanted both ovaries gone. Did it with my breasts. When a geneticist screened me for the BRCA gene, I vowed to have a double mastectomy if she found even a trace. Losing my hair to chemo is another matter entirely. Not only do I associate my hair more with my womanhood than either my womb or my breasts, but it's also the most visibly Mexican thing about me. I have the blue eyes and the light skin of my paternal Griest family, but my pelo is puro Elizondo, thick, dark, curly. One of the last things anyone remembers my maternal abuela saying before she committed suicide at age 25 is that she didn't ever want her youngest son's curls cut. His aunts upheld that wish until he was refused enrollment at elementary school because of it. Having fewer connections to my abuela, I started wearing my hair halfway to my elbows in high school, and I've kept it that length ever since. My ovaries, my uterus, my cervix, possibly even my breasts, none of these losses make me any less myself. But my hair is my identity, my ancestry, my inheritance. I will not feel part of my lineage without it. Suddenly I am hyperventilating. My mother steers me out onto the balcony, grabbing my father along the way. He's reached the stage of Alzheimer's where he's largely self-absorbed, but he still enjoys excitement. For the moment, I'm more intriguing than the chocolate in the pantry. Mom plunks me down in the Adirondack chair. She orders Dad to hold my hand while she punches numbers into the phone. I assume she's calling the surgeon back, but then the voice of my sister resounds through the speaker. All of my family is now here, but my breath does not return. My body's been absorbing one trauma after another for 14 days straight. Apparently, my lungs have declared una huelga, a strike. Mom holds the phone, Dad holds my hand, I hold my pelo, and I heave. It is late September in North Carolina. The oak tree above us is already autumnal. As a breeze rustles through, golden leaves begin to fall. You see that? Mom asks. That is you. You are going to lose your hair just like this tree will lose its leaves. As the wind intensifies, more leaves swirl around us. I stare up at the branches as they slowly denude like my body soon will. Not only my pelo, but also my eyelashes, my eyebrows, my leg hair, my arm hair, my pubic hair, until I am wholly naked, until I am a middle-aged woman reborn. And then spring will come, Mom says. Spring will come and you will grow it back again. With this promise comes the breath we all slowly exhale. The cabin lights dim. Actually, before I begin this part, I want to introduce the hairdresser. the most spectacular psychologist, therapist, caregiver, healer, Diane of Beehive Salon. If you're looking for a stylist, this is look no further. The cabin lights dim. The writer climbs into the director's chair. The breast cancer survivor, the psychiatrist, the photographer, the violinist who used to be the fiance, the opera singer from Italy, and the mother from South Texas gather all around. The hairdresser enters with the makeup case. The comb, rubber bands, the scissors, and the razor rise up from the depths. The writer grabs a pillow that has hung halfway to her elbow since high school. The psychiatrist hands her the gin and tonic instead. The violin is unsheathed. The opera singer rattles the tambourine. The writer takes a long, cold swallow before returning the glass. The 7 women wait for her nod before they begin. The opera singer emits the wail that transports them to another time. The violinist bows them to another sphere. The hairdresser combs the pillow into the ponytails that get snipped off one by one by one. The breast cancer survivor carries the ponytails to the table. The hairdresser flicks on the razor. The writer cries out. The mother takes her hand. The Italian singer howls. The violin erupts in arpeggios. The tambourine pounds and trembles. The pillow falls all around them. The photographer documents the transformation. The writer weeps. The mother weeps. The violinist, who used to be the fiancé, weeps. The hairdresser flicks off the razor. The psychiatrist holds up the mirror. The writer reaches for the pillow that once hung halfway to her elbows before leaning in to see the woman she will become. Fewer than half the women diagnosed with ovarian cancer survive even 5 years. The shock I sustained was visceral, but once it wore off, I'm here to tell you an even more powerful emotion replaced it. A galactic shot of euphoria. Because all I've ever wanted to do in this life is travel the world and write about it. Write about the people, write about the places that I encountered along the way, and that is exactly what I had done. I realized in that moment art was enough, because all I will ever have is this moment. And if art is where I find the most meaning, the most joy, then art is how I must fill those moments. So euphoria, it was immense. It was also brief, because then came the panic attacks, wave after wave of hyperventilating panic attacks. Because my first infusion of chemo was in a week. You know what? I was supposed to do that before this. Okay, we're gonna move on. My oncologist released me from cancer treatment, and the artists whose company I immediately sought, who do you suppose? Who would you immediately want to hang out with if you go through all of this? Who are you gonna call? Belly dancers! Yes! All right. That is why I then took myself to Havana, where the dancers Tiffany Hanan Madera and Gretel Yabre were hosting the Havana Habibi Belly Dancing Festival. Some of you know I was a belly dancer in my 20s, but I had long since abandoned it. Hanan, however, reassured me. She said belly dance, but we can also supply art. Belly dance allows you to die and come back. I have been reincarnated many times myself. And I was too, during a workshop on hip signatures. 100 women and girls rise to their feet. Positioning us before the mirror, Mira breaks down the hip circles of 4 legendary Egyptian dancers, Samia Gamal, Nadia Gamal, Fifi Abdo, and Zahila Zikiki, by showing us how to properly align our psoas. Then she urges us to create our own hip signatures. One dancer makes a full rotation of pulsing figure 8s. Another pivots halfway through a horizontal circle and finishes it vertically. A vivacious woman completes hers by whipping her long black mane over her head and back again. Soon everyone is tucking the bottom of their shirt into their sports bra and examining their canvases and the wall of mirrors. Every innovation wins shouts of approval. Being surrounded by so much physical beauty makes me forget the diminishment of my own until I step inside a vacated spot by the mirror. Here again is the shock of the fresh scar that runs from my navel to my pubis, the double helix from my chemoport, branded beneath my clavicle, the sunken inset of my eyes, the stubble of my hair, the pallor of my skin, the emptiness of my womb. I am sterile now. I am neutered. I want a bolt. Then I see the abdomen beside mine, cross-hatched with stretch marks. It bears the scars of a recent cesarean. I meet the woman's gaze in the mirror. A Cuban with thick, wavy hair, she senses what I am thinking. Help. Sliding her hips to the right, she waits for me to follow. When I do, she drops her right hip down, then glides to the left. Just as I meet her there, she undulates. I stack on a shimmy. She joins me. Together, we shake, we shake, we shake, we shake, we shake, until the scars of our nascent life and near death blur together. No sooner had I recovered from cancer than my beloved father got hospitalized, during which he lost the ability to walk. We moved into a neighborhood care facility for Alzheimer's. Every month I flew home to Texas to discover something new he could not do. How to brush his teeth, how to slip on his shoes, how to feed himself, how to make eye contact. If we slid a drumstick into his hand, however, he could still tap out a groove. Drumming was no longer his livelihood. It was now his lifeline. Here he is playing with his last student, his granddaughter, Annalena. Days after his death, we witnessed drumming become his legacy at his funeral. Annalena squeezes the hand of her girlfriend before rising from the pew. Standing before the cherrywood box is Dad's longtime throne. Annalena takes her seat upon it. Before her is a snare drum and a pair of sticks. She slowly drops one stroke, then another, again and again until she's created an opening roll. She segues into a sampling of the rudiments Dad taught her, paradiddles, flams, single and double strokes that predate the American Revolution, that signaled to soldiers when to rise, when to fire, when to retreat. And finally, the downfall of Paris. It is riveting, especially when Annalena incorporates Dad's signature move, slipping a drumstick under her right armpit before striking the left stick on 1, striking left again on 2 before transferring the stick to her right hand for the strike on 3, then removing the pit stick with her left hand and slamming both sticks down on 4. From there, she transitions to her own improvisation, something like jazz, but at a speed metal pace. Her skill is atavistic. This is rasa in extremis. Suddenly, Annalena dips her head. Grief is on the verge of overwhelming her until something intervenes. It straightens her spine, steadying her gaze. I don't believe in God or the aftermath or the afterlife. I am not spiritual. Annalena will explain to me years later. But at the funeral, when I was closing it out over my right shoulder, where his ashes were, he said, "Bring it back now, bring it back." It was so insane. I never felt anything like that in my life. But I felt it. Everyone in the funeral home feels it too. My father is actively channeling his art through his granddaughter. By and by, their double strokes start slowing, closing down the roll. But their final beat lands like a roar. Last one. Annalena has since followed my dad's footsteps by taking her sticks to the sea. Today, she is a drummer for Carnival Cruise Ship. Woo! That is not only inheritance, my friends, that is immortality. We'll see if we can get this to play. Oh, because she rocks out. Oh. Oh my goodness. Okay, you'll just have to imagine it. All right. That brings us back, of course, to our original question. Is art enough? Yes, because as these 100 women and more around the globe have shown me, art is inheritance, art is reconciliation, art is descent, art is revenge, art is medicine. Art is unzipping your body for a spiritual orgasm in the palace of the moon. Art is self-actualization. Art is lineage, art is love, art is immortality. Which leaves just one last question. What is art to you? Amazing. There's so many people in here I love so very, very, very much, and it means everything. I'm getting emotional because I'm just remembering, last time I was here, I was diagnosed just a couple of days later. So we're gonna hope that doesn't happen this time. When I set off on book tour, and so many members of my cancer team are here, and I just thank you so much for seeing me through that time. It is because of you that this book exists. So thank you so much for everything. Yeah. Because of technical difficulties. Anybody have, maybe we do a question and then I can go back to signing books. Anybody have a question? Is it like totally late? It's late.
It's 10 till 7.
10 to 11. Okay. Question. Irene, hello.
How did you find most of the people? Like Google, you see them on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Sorry.
Okay, go
No,
for it.
do it,
Yes,
miss.
let's
Do it.
Do it. Go ahead.
Press the button.
Yeah, every woman came to me a different way. Only one did I actually know in advance. That was Sandra Cisneros, who's been my madrina since I was an intern at since I read House on Mango Street when I was in junior high or high school, right? So she was the only person with whom I had a pre-existing relationship. Everyone else came a different way, including a couple of guests that we were able to bring to UNC. Hope Azeda actually was brought by the Women's and Gender Studies program, and I am just so grateful because that was, just talk about like the angel screamer moments, when you're a writer, like, ah! And it was absolutely that. Hope walked in and just, all right, whatever it takes, I'm following her, and without question, she's going to be part of this narrative. Yeah, so if anything, as a longtime nonfiction writer, I've just learned, like, when you begin to see the movie screen just sort of roll out before your eyes, like that's when you pay attention, that's when you follow people to the ends of the earth. Because part of my process is I really want and need to see them creating art in their own natural environment, in their home. I want to understand the context in which they create. So yes, they all came to me in different ways. And in a couple of instances, I was just going, randomly to Iceland. And so I'm like, all right, let's see who's there, Bjork, yes, and who else, right? So yeah, that's basically how that happened. Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Was there a chapter or a woman that was the most challenging to write for you?
Wendy Whalen. Yes. One should be quite cautious when approaching a prima ballerina. And I will leave it at that. So the challenge was, my only knowledge of ballet was what I experienced as a 5-year-old in a tutu. And then I went to interview the greatest ballerina of the last century, the one widely recognized as the greatest ballerina of the last century. So that interview alone required about 7 months of watching YouTube videos, reading as many reviews as I could download, reading books about ballet, really trying to get deep into the ballet psychology, which is a wild place to go. Also just trying to understand how it works in the body. And then I realized that her ballet company experienced a lot of Me Too drama, and terrible things happened. And so then I had to put that into my brain, which is that's a very hard rabbit hole to go down, reading deep into Me Too. And I wrote a lot about that, and then she actually asked for all of it to be removed. So about 6 months of research into Me Too also went out the window. That was a couple of years of my life for one chapter. So I hope you appreciate it. All right. I feel like this is going on for a while. Okay, one last one. Elise, yes, hello.
I haven't read the book. It sounds like all of the women have sort of public artistic lives. And I'm wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about the art that happens in privacy and quiet spaces, and art that no one else might ever see or know about.
Wow.
And like, how do people then, well, this is a separate question, but just the validating, like, does it have to have a public life? And so, whatever.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that lovely question, Elise. That makes me think about a term that I introduced in this book, which is art monk. And how art monk came to me was this. During my nomadic phase, when I put all my stuff in storage and was crashing on people's couches, I was really just looking for places to stay as cheaply as possible. And that search sent me to deep South Texas, to Leb Shemaya, which is a Catholic house of prayer. To stay there, it's $15 a night. That is the excellent news. The challenging news, the catch, is that you have to take a vow of silence in order to be there. And I thought, how is that possibly ever going to happen? How could I possibly take a vow of silence? But then I learned that there were 2 canonized Catholic hermits who had taken vows of silence in the 1980s, and I'm like, okay, I'm there. I've got to check out these hermits. But it's really hard to hang out with hermits because they were just in their cabin all day long praying, right? So they did not want to make friends. And so I was like, wow, there's a hermit and a hermit and a wow and wow. And then I suddenly realized, wait, what is so different between what they are doing and what I'm doing? Which is they are spending all of their day in silence, praying for the souls of the world, praying for people they will never meet. And I began to realize that is essentially what I was doing as a writer as well, right? So little of what we actually write and an infinitesimal percentage of what we create is actually ever seen. And we do it, why do we do this? We do this for, I think, a really similar reason why monks pray. We do it because we love the world, because we love so much, because we tap into this universal energy. This is our way of connecting to that energy. With some of us, it happens through paint. With some of us, it happens through clay. With some of us, it happens through words. And it's tens of thousands of hours that we infuse into this. And so we are all, so I guess what I'm saying, Elise, is that we are all that person. We are all that person creating from this quiet space. And if I've learned anything also, and I know I have a lot of my wonderful students are here, a lot of writers who I just deeply believe in. Yes, there's only so much you can control in the art business, right? You can basically control the quality of the work, and that's kind of it. The time that you put into it, do you enjoy the quality of the time that you put into it? Those are some things in which you actually have agency. But something else, in the book I call it like career lightning, generally has to happen for it to take off in a way that you can become remotely sustainable. So I was spending my time with people who had literally been struck by lightning, and that they had been able to find a way to make it work through profound sacrifice. And even the most famous ballerina in all time, right? She is still very worried about her rent, right? Now she's become like the director of the ballet, but there was a period when I met her, 3 years, where she just really didn't know what was going to happen. So yes, so I think that we are all that woman, and I yes. And I honor those women, and I know there may be many here among us right now. And so the last slide that I have, right? Art is medicine, art is dissent, art is resistance, art is immortality, art is love, art is lineage. Where do you find yourself in that? And work toward that. That hopefully can be your source of inspiration and freedom and motivation as you embark upon this road. Thank you all so much.